are kicking things off with another episode of All About the Gear. I'm sitting here with my good buddy, Mr. Doug K, and in his hot little hands over there, he managed to get his hands on the Sony QX10 lens camera. And we debated back and forth a little bit while we were having lunch a couple weeks ago about should we even do this camera because, or do an All About the Gear about this camera because, you know, it seems like it was a lot of hype about it, and then it kind of just sort of drained off. And I lobbied to do it and convinced Doug to put the camera through its paces. So here we are, Doug. We're going to talk about the QX10, right?
We are. Here's the little baby right here. We call it the lens camera. I don't know if that's the official name for it or not, but it is the Sony QX10, and this is actually your camera. Thank you for loaning it to me for this show.
Yes.
And what we've got here is, I call it the Alex Lindsay camera because Alex talked about for years he wanted a camera that had in it a sensor, a lens, and that's about it. He basically wanted to be able to attach a mobile device to it to control the camera and to have the display and so forth. Well, that's pretty much what Sony's done here with the QX10. It's a cute little thing. There are two of them actually. There's the QX10, the QX100. We'll talk about the two of them. But this is the 10. This is the cheapy one. Let's call it the cheapy one.
Yeah. Consumer.
Yeah. And what it is, so it has no viewfinder. It has no controller per se. That depends on a mobile device that you connect to it using Wi-Fi. This one has a 10x zoom. So it gives you, in this case, sort of a 25 to 250 full frame equivalent.
Yeah.
It's a very innovative concept. You know, Sony's this past year, 2013, they've put out a lot of stuff that's really just sort of experimental, and this is obviously the first version of something. We don't know what's going to come. We think there might be more, but it's an interesting first try. It costs $250, but interestingly, just yesterday, the day after Christmas, you can get this free from Adorama if you buy a Sony A7R. So
nice.
That shows you what somebody thinks of the camera.
Yeah.
They did up the new firmware, upgrade the firmware just a week ago. They've improved the firmware in the camera as well as their Play Memories app that you need to run this thing, as well as the APIs.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? You mentioned that Play Memories app. I know we're going to go into that in a little bit, but the cool thing that I found when I started shooting with Sony's, and I have the NEX5R, is when you tether them using the Play Memories app, there's not like there's a 5R NEX app, and then there's a QX app, and then there's a whatever app. Alpha app is all one app that you use either on Android or on iOS, and that one app connects to all your different cameras. Am I right on with that?
That is correct. Now, there's some it doesn't. It doesn't connect to the NEX7, for example.
Okay.
But it does go to the 5, the 6, the QX cameras, a bunch of their video cameras, and it connects to the A7 and the A7R. So it does pretty well. Also, it also connects. Well, not through Play Memories, but we'll talk about the API a little bit. You can connect to Sony TVs and Sony mobile phones with it. Sort of interesting. Now, that's the good news, Frederick. The bad news is it's not really a very good app in terms of remote apps. You know, we recently reviewed the Lumix GX7, and I think the Panasonic app is quite a bit better, certainly in terms of functionality that it gives you.
Yeah. I agree, and I've used both of them, and I wouldn't say that it's not like the Sony app is horrible by any means. It works, and it gets the job done using the QX and all that, and the job being you can remote shoot and see the image on the phone, you know, that sort of thing, or on the tablet, whatever you're shooting with. But that it's like that level down of functionality that's missing. Like with the like you mentioned, the GX7, the Lumix GX7, using the Panasonic app, I can look on there. I can see all my settings for the camera. I can zoom from the phone. I can tap to focus from the phone. I can do pretty much everything I need to do. Plus, it's got multiple modes in there of like, okay, I want to shoot tethered, right? So the device is over across the room and I'm shooting over here. I want my images to show up on the tablet so that say a client can view them as I'm shooting. So the tethered scenario, or I can have that person trigger the camera. Say I have a camera mounted on a basketball hoop and I want to get a layup shot, but I can't physically be up there. I can put it up there and then trigger it at the right moment. So those kind of things that these more advanced apps have I think it's really cool.
Yeah, yeah, and Sony can go there. They certainly have the expandability. Here,
Yeah.
let's take a look at what this thing's actually got.
Yeah.
So it's a you can get a sense of how big it is from the size in my hand here,
Yeah.
and you turn it on.
And that size is it's even larger. It's smaller than that because you have that back plate on there that comes off, right?
That's right. The back plate, I'll show you that because you can change it for some different versions. I think you probably know more about that than I do.
Oh, I don't know.
But so it's got a zoom. It's actually got a button here on the side that you can electronically zoom in and out with in case you wanted to do it this way instead of using the remote. Has a shutter release button here so you can just take a picture there.
Mm-hmm.
You have USB charging of the battery. You have then you take this thing off the back, right? We'll talk about that in a minute. And inside you have the SD card. I'm going to put this in the right spot here so you can see it.
There you go. I can see
you
it.
You have the SD card and the battery inside. It's one of those little micro SD cards.
Yeah.
And then I think you can probably get different things that hook onto this back rather than this clip.
Yeah.
And this clip is interesting because the concept here. Now it's funny. People are going to laugh at this. But the idea is that you put it on the back of your mobile phone. All right, so here it is on my iPhone, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And now it's just like a camera, right?
Right.
I mean, it's crazy, okay?
Yeah.
But this is one of the ways you can shoot with it. If you wanted to pretend you've actually got a camera, you now have your screen, you have your lens, you have all the pieces you need. Or, of course, you can just take it off the camera and use it any way you want. You can hold it next to your hip. You can, as you say, put it above the basketball hoop or whatever you want to do to get your shot. Yeah. So it's sort of a fun concept.
Doug, let's talk a little bit about who this camera's for, which we always do, right? So in speaking with Sony, so I had conversations with them about this camera, and I asked them that question, and I think what I gelled or what I got out of the conversation was the QX series is for people that want a level more than what their iPhone or their mobile device can offer in terms of optics. So you can have the QX camera, and tethered to your phone, so you have the brains of your phone and the connectivity and all that of your phone with the benefit of a high-end or relatively high-end point-and-shoot camera. Do you think did they succeed with that? I mean, does this eliminate the need completely for a point-and-shoot?
I would accept their explanation of who it's intended for. Yeah. I think, we'll say when we get to the wrap-up, I don't think it really succeeds at that. I think it's a really interesting first try. Okay. And part of the reason that we'll take a look at is the awkwardness of using it in terms of running it with the Play Memories application. That's really one of the problems there. Okay. You want to take a look at that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Yeah. Here's the interesting thing, which is, let me switch over to the camera view here. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set up and take a picture with this thing, but I want to show you how long it takes to get it set up. So here
you're going to do a live connect. Uh-oh.
Oh, yeah, because I think people need to see what's really involved here. So here's my phone, right? The first thing you got to do, this is on iOS. Now in Android, you've got NFC, so you get the connections quite a bit easier to get through this part. You go to Settings, you go to Wi-Fi, you have to select your network. In my case, of course, I've got another network that comes up first, so you've basically already gone into this thing. You've given it the password that you need for this network and so forth. Okay, I select the network. Now I go to my Play Memories app. Now this is all just because I want to take a picture. And every time I want to take a picture, I almost have to do this. All right, there it is. You get a look at that, and you can zoom in, right? Yeah. And you pan using your hand, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And the things that I can do here is I can change the mode. I've got what they call a program mode, which is really just exposure compensation. I've got auto, intelligent auto, and superior auto. Don't use superior auto because what that does is take multiple exposures, which, unless you're on a tripod, is going to drive you nuts. So program mode gives me exposure compensation. And then, of course, I can come along, push a button here, and I can take a picture. Takes the picture. It downloads a low-res version to the phone, and then on the phone I can go and look at that picture and so forth. So it's handy. The fact is that if you use your phone for something else, if you connect to another Wi-Fi network, you have to go through that whole process again in order to connect back to the camera.
Or if you turn the camera off, will it reconnect?
Or if it times out. My guess is we'll try it. We don't want to take too much time with this here.
Yeah, this is important. Yeah, let's look at this.
Right. So we turn the camera off. Okay. The phone says disconnected. We turn the camera back on.
Okay.
Lens comes out. Let's see if it reconnects or not.
Let's
It
see.
says,
Come on. Come on, baby.
disconnected. Disconnected, no shooting. Go to it tells me go to Wi-Fi settings.
You got to
So
reconnect it to the network.
right.
Yeah, yeah. See, that. I think that part is where they need to do more work on, because the leap of going from, you know what? Hey, look, there's an awesome thing happening over there. Look, it's the president. I had no idea he was going to be at this party. I got to get a picture, you know.
Right.
And you start fumbling and messing with finding the Wi-Fi network and all this, and by that time, the motorcade is gone, right? So
Yeah. So this is really the flaw of the system. Let's not call it the camera. Let's call it the whole system of the app and the camera, which is you can't quickly take a picture. You're going to miss the president or the pope or whoever it is that's driving by. You know.
Right.
What's cool about it is that you can put the camera anywhere within Wi-Fi range, and that's neat. And I think it is a great camera for experimentation, particularly for people who are willing to get into the API and want to try and do some cool things about that.
Right. Yeah. It's not a grab the moment peak action kind of camera. Like you're saying, it's more of a considered camera. If you're going to do some, like that basketball shot we're talking about, if you're going to mount it to the rim, you know where you're going to be, you got it tethered, you're ready to go. Hopefully it doesn't lose connection by the time you get off the ladder and all that, and you're ready to shoot. But one thing, Doug, in Sony's defense on this, the connection using Android devices that are equipped with NFC, near field communication technology, is markedly easier than with iOS devices, because iOS devices don't have NFC, which is that tap to connect. So with NFC devices like my Moto X, I can tap it to the camera, and everything that you just went through happens automatically, in theory. Even that takes a long, you know.
But let's be realistic about this, Frederick.
Yeah.
First of all, if you put this on the basketball hoop, you can't tap it. You tap it before it goes up there. If it dies, you're stuck. You got to wait till halftime.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Correct.
At the same time, and the thing will time out. That's for sure. And the battery won't last. The battery will not last for a full game. In particular, it's going to drain your camera battery. That's a real problem, because you're constantly streaming live view to your camera during the process, and that makes you can watch that battery go down like a gas gauge on an old truck. I mean, it really just drains. And I mean, and look at this. This is, this is bulkier than a point and shoot.
It is.
You end up with the phone in one pocket, the lens in another, and you could have had a point and shoot to take a better picture and be more responsive. It doesn't support Windows phones, by the way. It's only Android and iOS.
Okay.
That's an important thing for 2 or 3 people.
For that small subset, right?
Right, and you are somewhat limited what you can do with the app. You cannot do any manual focusing. You can't do any manual exposure. It's JPEG only. There's no RAW capability, so it's very, very limited in that sense. Again, what I like about it is, first of all, the image quality is pretty good. It's got an 18 megapixel backlit sensor. It's not great in low light, but it's pretty good in general, in good light. It does have both optical and digital image stabilization, and that really, you do notice it. If you hold this in your hand and you shake a little bit, you can see that it's helping quite a bit. Does decent video, not great. It does 1080p at 30 frames a second. It records only a 12 megabit per second video stream, but not bad for a little camera like that. Should also mention its big brother, the QX100. Should we talk about that now? Real quick?
Absolutely. I was going to ask you about that, and if it shoots RAW. I'm not even sure.
Yeah, the QX100 costs twice as much. That's a $500 lens. We talk about bodies with no lenses. Here's a lens with no body. Interesting. Okay. So $500. This is a pretty interesting camera in that it has the same sensor and I think the same processor as the Sony RX100 Mark II that we've recently reviewed. Oh,
wow.
So it's got a really high quality sensor. Same lens too. It's a 3.6 times zoom, which is a 28 to 100 millimeter equivalent. Still no RAW. You can't shoot RAW with it, JPEG only. They've added in that shutter and aperture priority modes. So you've got auto mode, you get shutter priority, you get aperture priority. Still no manual though, but that's got quite a good image quality. Still all the same connectivity problems that we've talked about here.
But do you think those are solvable? Because it sounds like the hardest thing here, or the biggest problem with this camera, is the boot up time and the connection time. If Sony somehow manages to solve them with this camera, you think it has legs?
There are two ways to look at that. One is the category of problems that relate to maintaining a Wi-Fi connection. That's really going to depend on the phone, because if the phone decides to switch from one network SSID, which is the network identifier, to another, you're going to lose the connection, and there's nothing that that the camera or the app can do with that. But that may be something that improves over time as the camera manufacturers make this better. And my guess is it might be better on Android. You have an Android phone as well as an iPhone, so you may know better than I do. I only have an iPhone.
Right. Yeah. I think for me the experience. I have an iPhone 5S, and I love the phone, and it's my daily phone. But the Motorola, the Moto X phone is superior in a lot of ways. Literally, and this kind of stuff is where it shines. It just seems to be, it's just better. It just works better with these kinds of, real world usages where, the iPhone is great if you're in the Apple walled garden, which a lot of us live in. So.
Yeah, the other part of it in terms of future is that we know from having used the Panasonic mobile app, which is, as we said earlier, so much better, that clearly that's something that Sony can improve on, because we've seen it. There's no technical limitation that would keep them from making the mobile app better than it is.
Right.
And they did just a week ago come out with an upgrade. The upgrade had some improvements, so we know that's there. Before we wrap up on this, let me just mention the API, because being a software developer geek, of course I had to see what I could do with the API. I had to give it a try.
Yeah.
And I did. I didn't do anything spectacular with it, but then again, you can't do anything spectacular with it.
You work with the stuff you're given, right?
Yeah. It's the design of it, the architecture from a software engineer's point of view, will look at it and say, yeah, it makes sense. It's reasonably well done. You don't feel like you're working with a Betamax. It's pretty good. But the functionality is pretty limited. I'll look at my list here of what the kinds of things you're able to do. Obviously, you can take a picture. You can use the self-timer. You can determine what modes your device is capable of doing. For example, can it do video? Can it record audio? Can it record stills? Yeah. You can take a still, record video. You can turn live view on and off. You can zoom. You can zoom the thing in and out, but of course you don't know programmatically where to stop, so that requires some interaction.
Right.
And that's about it. So basically, it's taking a picture. That's what taking a picture and getting the results transferred back to your remote application. Okay. And the API, by the way, has the same unreliability issues that the mobile app has. If you lose your connection to the camera, to the lens, from your separately developed app, you have to restart that app in the same way. Now the app can be more robust. It can restart itself, for example, but again, depends what you're running on. That obviously the thing you're running on has to have Wi-Fi.
Right.
So that's pretty much it. I mean, I really look forward to. I think it's great. I'm really happy that Sony did this. I think it's got to be an experiment for them in so many ways. They're trying different things. They're putting stuff out there to see what works and how people react to it. Yeah. I'd love to see this taken up by the hacker community to see what they can do with it. But it's a version 1, or let's call it a version 0.5 maybe.
Right. Okay. I mean, that's an excellent summary of this particular camera. I'm still wondering though. Given those issues that you mentioned, that you raised about the connectivity and all that, if those were solved in an ideal world, let's say, who would this camera be? I mean, does this camera have an audience, or is the audience is it the utopian vision of that the Alex Lindsay camera, where the smarts are in the body and you just have optics over here? Did Sony reach that? And if so, who's this for? Is it for kids? Is it for photographers that don't want to carry a point and shoot? Is it for moms that with new kids? Who is the target audience for this particular body? I'm wondering.
Yeah. First question, no, they didn't reach their goal with the camera, I think, because it's not the Alex Lindsay camera yet. As long as you don't have the reliability of the connection to the device, you don't have it. And in terms of who it is for, I think it's for people who want to do reviews.
It's for us.
I think it's great for that. Remember that all these functions, these remote functions, you can also do with any of the other new Sony cameras.
Right.
So you can still put your RX100 up on the backboard. Yeah. And the question is, why would you put this versus the RX100? The RX100 has better battery life and so forth. So it doesn't quite make it. It's fun, but it's just not quite there.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. Doug, thank you. It's again, very educational. And I can tell that you can't wait to put that camera in the box and mail it to me. Get out of here.
I'm gonna do that. Yes, I've been hanging on to this for a couple of months. It feels like, and but I am gonna go out and take a couple more pictures before I send it back. So we'll do that.
Take your time.
Okay.
Take your time. All right. Well, that's it for another episode of All About the Gear. What do we have coming up next on the?
We're gonna do the Sony A7.
This is like opposite ends of the spectrum here. So we got the ultimate low end, with the QX10, and then the high end with the A7, right?
Yeah, and then I'm hoping to get the Olympus OMD EM1.
Ooh.
And I don't know, we got some surprises after that.
I want to talk about that EM1. Maybe I don't want to talk about that camera because I don't want to hear how good it is. I really don't.
It's going to be an expensive show for you.
It is. Cool, Doug. All right. Well, thanks a lot. I think we got another episode of All About the Gear in the can.
All right. Thanks, Frederick. Bye-bye.
Take care.